Alright, so I have my half shaft and knuckle assembly here on the table. I'm going to give this entire thing a little bit of a refresh. So I'll start by removing the toe links and then the actual half shaft from the knuckle and hub assembly. Then once it's all apart, I'll get to cleaning some of these components. The knuckles actually look really good, and the cross-access joints look like they're in real good shape too. So the hub is a little rusty, but that's just typical Ford not zinc coating the hubs from the factory. So they're obviously going to get some rust, but I'll definitely replace the studs. If they're decent, I'll just get them all sandblasted and either get them zinc plated myself, or I'll put a light coating of like rust preventative on them. By the way, that was just using a Pitman arm puller. Pretty handy tool to pop out tie rods and whatnot without having to hammer on them and damage the threads. So next I'm going to get another puller and remove the half shaft from the knuckle and hub assembly. You're basically just loading the puller on here and the tension will pop the shaft right out. Alright, so I got everything removed. Next I'm just going to clean up the knuckle, pop out all of these studs, and clean up the hub as best I can. At this point I think I'll be keeping the factory hub, just clean it up a bit, and while I'm at it I'll probably replace the wheel bearings too. I'll do the same with the half shaft, clean up some of this rust, give it a nice refinish. So for the hub, I've been using this 3M rust and paint stripping disc, and for the most part it's been working really well. Alright, so I got rid of any loose surface rust on the half shafts. I mainly used my drill and wire wheel to get most of it off. As you can see, there's still a fair amount of surface rust, but that's perfectly fine because I'm going to be using the POR 15 on these guys. It's basically a rust paint encapsulator that works best when it's painted directly onto treated rust surface. So in this case, the rust is actually preferred over like a perfectly clean metal surface. This is going to look like a POR 15 commercial, but I ended up going with their whole line of products. So firstly, I'm going to use the cleaner and degreaser, which does exactly that. Just cleans and degreases any loose contaminants. Then once the degreaser is washed off and dry, I'll put some POR 15 metal prep on there. And what metal prep does is it actually etches the rust, and it's just supposed to give you an ideal surface to give the actual POR 15 rust coating an ideal bond. And once that's left on there for about 30 minutes and washed off, this is the actual POR 15 coating. I got it in a semi-gloss black finish. Once the coating is on, it'll seal up all the rust and prevent it from, spreading any further. Once it cures, it's supposed to be pretty strong and resistant to chipping and whatnot. I'm not going to go crazy with it, just 2 light coats to get everything covered, especially since it's a rotating part. I don't want to throw the balance of the rotation off. I have seen this done a few times now, and no one seems to have any real issues with it, so I'm not too worried about it. And then finally, to finish everything off, I'm just going to spray this POR 15 top coat, which is supposed to fully seal in and protect the actual POR 15 coating. The brush-on coating is actually not UV resistant, and this stuff is, so it just adds that last layer of protection. This is obviously under the car with low light, so it may not even be an issue, but I already had this stuff laying around, and I might as well use it, and that'll be it. So let's see what happens. So we got the fan drying, the cleaner and degreaser. The next step is the metal prep, which is going to etch the surface, give the POR 15 ideal conditions to bond to the surface. The key here is to keep the surface constantly soaked for about 20 to 30 minutes to let the chemical do its thing. I'm just going to keep brushing it on and keep track of the time. Then once that's done, I'll clean and neutralize with water, let it completely dry, and then I'll be ready to brush on the actual POR 15. The other thing I just wanted to show is you can see this strip of perfectly clean metal and then all the rust on the rest of the half shaft. This is from the little yellow tags that I had on here from before. It's pretty crazy. The thing is, by using the metal prep, it will treat the clean metal as well as the rusted metal, so the POR 15 will have a strong bond to both surfaces. Alright, so I've been doing this for about 30 minutes or so. So now I'm just going to rinse half shafts off thoroughly, put the heater on them, and then let them air dry. Alright, time to get the actual POR 15 coating on here. I'm going to apply it with a brush. Just brush it on kind of light, nothing crazy thick, just 2 light coats. This stuff is supposed to be self-leveling, so it should be relatively smooth once it's done. Then after that, within the application window, I'll spray the top coat as the top and final protective layer, and that'll be it. I know it seems like a lot of work for a part that's not really visible, but most of the rear subframe will be powder coated, and just want them to look nice and presentable. Having these half shafts all rusty would just be unacceptable to me. half shafts are done. Turned out great. I didn't film it, but I went ahead and sprayed the 2 coats of the top coat in a chassis black finish. It's kind of like a semi-gloss matte finish. Really happy with the results. It'll go nicely with the rest of the refinished IRS components. And that's pretty much it.